There is a company most people have never heard of that owns a piece of almost everything you interact with every single day. Your phone, your grocery store, your landlord, your bank, your oil company, the media outlet you are watching right now. There is a decent chance they are all connected to the same firm, one firm. And the people running it have the ear of presidents, prime ministers, and central banks across the entire planet. BlackRock manages more money than the gross domestic product of every country on Earth except the United States and China. That is over $10 trillion in assets under management. To put that in perspective, the entire United States federal budget is around $6 trillion a year. BlackRock moves nearly twice that. And yet most people could not tell you who runs it, what it does, or how it got this powerful. The reason that matters is not just abstract finance stuff. It is that when one entity owns significant stakes in virtually every major corporation at the same time, the old rules of competition and accountability start to break down in ways that affect your rent, your groceries, your job, and who gets to shape government policy. This is the story of how that happened. Larry Fink grew up in Van Nuys, California, the son of a shoe store owner. He studied political science at UCLA, got his MBA and landed at First Boston in the 1970s as a bond trader. He was brilliant, genuinely, and helped pioneer the mortgage-backed securities market, the same financial instruments that would later detonate the global economy in 2008. But before that blow-up, Fink made a critical early mistake. A bad interest rate bet in 1986 cost First Boston around $100 million and essentially ended his time there. Most people don't recover from something like that. Fink used it as rocket fuel. In 1988, he co-founded BlackRock out of a single room with 8 partners and a vision that was somewhat radical at the time. Obsessively manage risk using data and technology instead of gut instinct. They built a proprietary risk analytics platform called Aladdin, and that system would quietly become one of the most powerful financial tools in human history. By the time the 2008 financial crisis hit, BlackRock wasn't just surviving, it was being called in to help fix things. The Federal Reserve hired BlackRock to help manage the toxic assets sitting on the books of Bear Stearns and AIG after their collapses. The US Treasury leaned on them, so did foreign governments. Here was a private company, accountable to no electorate, being handed the keys to evaluate and manage the wreckage of the global financial system. That moment was a turning point that almost nobody was paying attention to. Aladdin by this point was so sophisticated that other financial institutions were paying BlackRock to run their own portfolios through it. Pension funds, insurance companies, and sovereign wealth funds, entities managing trillions in other people's retirement savings, were all outsourcing their risk analysis to the same platform. Estimates suggest Aladdin now monitors somewhere in the neighborhood of $21 trillion in assets across the industry. Not assets BlackRock owns, but assets BlackRock watches, models, and advises on. That's a level of informational advantage that is almost impossible to overstate. And then came the index fund explosion. As passive investing took off through the 2000s and the 2010s, BlackRock's iShares became the dominant product. When you put money in a broad market index fund, your money flows into a pool that buys tiny pieces of hundreds or thousands of companies. BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street became the 3 largest shareholders of essentially every major company in the S&P 500 simultaneously. They own meaningful stakes in Boeing and Airbus, in Pepsi and Coca-Cola, in JP Morgan and Goldman Sachs, in ExxonMobil and NextEra Energy. In most industries, if you own a significant chunk of 2 direct competitors, antitrust law has something to say about that. This flew largely under the radar for years. So when does finance become politics? When you are big enough that governments need you more than you need them. After 2008, BlackRock's political tentacles grew fast. Fink became a fixture at Davos, at G7 summits, in the halls of the Treasury Department and the European Commission. His annual letter to chief executive officers, which he started publishing in 2012, became compulsory reading in boardrooms globally. When Fink told companies they needed to address climate risk, or racial equity, or long-term sustainability, markets actually moved. Not because he had regulatory power, because he had ownership leverage across nearly every major company at once. During the COVID-19 crisis, the Federal Reserve again turned to BlackRock, this time to help design and execute its corporate bond buying program. A private firm was essentially running monetary policy operations for the US central bank. Critics pointed out the obvious conflict of interest. The Fed said the program was managed with appropriate safeguards. BlackRock's fees were eventually waived under public pressure, but the relationship was already baked in. Former BlackRock executives have cycled into senior government roles across multiple administrations, both Republican and Democrat. That revolving door is not unique to BlackRock. It happens across finance, defense, and tech. But the sheer scale of BlackRock's presence makes every appointment significant. When someone who spent 15 years at BlackRock takes a treasury or regulatory role, they carry a world view shaped by that institution. The company also became a major player in housing markets, buying up single-family homes at scale through subsidiaries and funds, which fed into a genuine political firestorm around 2021, when people started connecting rising rents and home prices to institutional buyers, crowding out ordinary families. BlackRock pushed back hard on those characterizations, and the actual numbers suggest their direct residential holdings are smaller than the narrative implies. But the narrative caught fire because it felt true in a way that went beyond the data, because people could feel the concentration happening around them, even if they could not name it. What's genuinely unnerving isn't that BlackRock is some shadowy cabal pulling levers in secret. It's almost the opposite. They operate largely in the open. Larry Fink writes public letters. Their lobbying is disclosed. Their political donations are traceable. The scale of their influence is documented in regulatory filings. And yet somehow the very openness of it makes it harder to address, not easier. What law do you write to unwind $10 trillion of index fund capitalism without blowing up retirement accounts for millions of ordinary people? The system is too entangled to simply dismantle, and BlackRock knows it. That's the final twist in this story. The most powerful financial institution in human history isn't powerful because it operates in darkness. It's powerful because the entire modern financial system was built in a way that made something like BlackRock almost inevitable, and now governments, pension funds, and central banks are all dependent on the infrastructure it provides. Fink didn't take over the world through force or fraud. He built the plumbing, and now everyone needs the water. Whether that's genius, a structural flaw in capitalism, or both at the same time is a question worth sitting with. If you found this one interesting, hit subscribe. There are a lot more stories like this one that most people never hear told straight.